So this week we are finally getting really into the text and into the reading, and you're starting with chapter 13, which is part of a bigger, chapter 13, 14, and 15 are all part of a unit, and you'll notice that as you're going through the textbook. So what this unit is doing, it's trying to connect old with the new. Sometimes we refer to this time period, 1450 through 1750, as the early modern era, ERA. So what does that mean? Well, it suggests that there are some signs of modernity, and then also we're beginning to be a truly globalized world. And by that, it's when the Europeans were like, oh, hey, there's these whole two continents that we completely forgot about because we've been disconnected to them since the ice bridges melted. So because of that, it's not really discovering, but it's finding or coming to this realization that we're a much bigger world and that we're going to start connecting globally the East and the Western hemispheres. So as you're going through, what I want you to keep in mind is that chapter 13 through 15, they really just highlight changes from the traditional norms that were occurring during this time period. So these are kind of the exceptions to the rule. For the most part, a lot of humankind is just going to mark the continuation of patterns, just those traditional old school patterns. What we do start to see, and that's what's highlighted in these chapters, we start to see Europe's scientific revolution and modern population growth. We had the Black Death, aka the bubonic plague, that swept through in the 1300s. We're starting to see a rebound in population from that pandemic. We're also starting to see more highly commercialized economies developing in parts of Europe and Asia and also in the Americas and some of the larger cities. And keep in mind, most of the world's population is along coastal cities. So these larger cities are like your port cities. And that makes sense of why those economies are growing, because you have goods and people coming in and out of those areas. And then there's also, this is not really the sign of the whole picture, though, or this isn't really the whole story, and it can be kind of misleading, and that's what these chapters are going to try to point out. Europe and political and military power was very limited in mainland Asia and Africa. Islam was one of the most rapidly spreading faiths in Asia and Africa. And then by 1750, Europe, India, and China were comparable in manufacturing output. And there was little sign in 1750 that a modern industrial society was approaching. So, like I said, kind of keep an open mind as you're reading through this. And each of these things that are talked about, especially like in all of these chapters, we could spend an entire 16 weeks just focusing on the topics that they are highlighting. So remember, this is a survey course. We're briefly just kind of scratching the surface of all these different societies and empires and things that are happening around the world. You're going to get to know a little about a lot of things. So as you're going through chapter 13, a lot of it's probably going to be review. Doesn't matter if you grew up in the United States or if you grew up in Africa or in Asia or in Europe. It's all just kind of review of what you should have studied at some point of your high school, like your K through 12 career, right? Or even, like hopefully in high school, grades 9 through 12, you were learning about this stuff. So it's talking about Europeans and their colonization and conquering of the Americas. Not great for the natives that were living here, but it talks about how each of those empires that come over, so you have like 5 major empires, and I hope I did that correctly, probably like more like 4, but you've got the Spanish, right? They were the first ones here. And you've got the Spanish, you've got the French, you've got the English, and you've got the Dutch. We don't really talk too much about the Dutch because they're here for a minute and then they're gone. But you have I lied. It's those four major empires that are in the Americas, along with the natives that were here. And you could argue that there are native empires. Unfortunately, by the time of European contact, they are in a state of decline just because of natural reasons like drought, famine, some plagues. And then when the Europeans get here, like they hit them with all these diseases that they have not been exposed to. So it's really easy for Europeans to take over when the population's dying of sickness anyways. So that should all be like review for you. Then we're going to switch over, and those of you that were here in America and you might not have learned a lot about like world history and like European and Asian history, this is going to be maybe some new topics, some new information for you. So you'll learn about the Russian Empire, and then you're going to learn about Asian empires. So empires that come out of like modern day China, the Ottoman Empire that's in modern day Turkey, the Holy Roman Empire. So there's all these empires like competing for space and for ruling happening in Eurasia. So I've added some videos, and again, these are crash course videos that you've probably seen, but this talks about what's going on with 15th century mariners, so people that are sailing, navigating the waterways. A lot of that is going to be a review for you. And then this is more about the Russian and the Asian empires, the second video. So after reading this chapter, you should be able to do these four things. Recognize the variety of empires in the early modern period. There's a whole lot of them. You don't need to know specifics about each and every one of them, but you do need to know kind of the differences in them. Understand that empire building was not just a Western European phenomenon. It's not just happening because of England, France, Spain. No, this is happening everywhere, all around the world. Describe the range of colonial societies that evolved and the reasons for differences between them. And then discuss the massive social reordering that attended European colonization in the Western Hemisphere. Here are the assignments that need to be completed for Chapter 13. All of these for this module are completed in Achieve. So you've got the learning curve, which is like your chapter quiz. Then you have this zooming in, and this is talking about a person and her significance between Old World and New World. You're going to learn about Dona Marina and how she was an interpreter for Cortez and how her life kind of evolved over like a short amount of time, actually. And then a map quiz. Both of these maps are found in Chapter 13, right? So there's two maps for this one quiz. And then if you need or if you want the PowerPoint, here's the PowerPoint. You can download this. It's also available in files. And just like with all of the modules as we're moving through, if for some reason these links are not working for you, that's okay. There's more links in the module after you look at after you look at this page. You can move on.